Event report analyzing Trump's renewed vision, a 10-year framework for American influence in Gaza. Date of event, February 4, 2025. Location, East Room, White House, Washington, D.C. Participants, former U.S. President Donald Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, various international media and political representatives. Overview. On February 4, 2025, during a joint press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled a controversial proposal to take over the Gaza Strip. This audacious plan involves the removal of nearly 2 million Palestinian residents to facilitate the reconstruction and development of the area, which Trump described as a demolition site. His vision includes transforming Gaza into an economic hub similar to prime real estate, with an ultimate goal of U.S. ownership and redevelopment. Key highlights of Trump's proposal. 1. Concept of takeover. Trump proposed that the U.S. would assume control over Gaza, suggesting a long-term commitment to transforming the region both economically and physically. He emphasized that this would not be a superficial development but a comprehensive reconstruction effort. 2. Relocation of residents. One of the most contentious aspects of the proposal was the suggestion that the Palestinian population of Gaza be relocated to neighboring Arab countries. Trump did not specify which countries would accept these displaced individuals, but he positioned this move as a necessary step for the redevelopment of Gaza. 3. International law and sovereignty issues. Trump's proposal has been met with immediate backlash, particularly concerning its legality under international law. Critics have pointed out that forcibly relocating a population and taking control of territory without consent would constitute violations of established norms and could be seen as an act of colonialism. 4. Immediate reactions. The announcement was met with swift condemnation from Palestinian leadership. President Mahmoud Abbas labeled the proposal as a violation of international law, while the group Hamas described it as a recipe for chaos. Arab nations including Jordan and Egypt reiterated their opposition to any forced displacement of Palestinians, emphasizing the need for a two-state solution. 5. U.S. political ramifications. The proposal has sparked a significant debate within the U.S. political landscape. While some Republicans expressed support, many Democrats condemned the plan as impractical and dangerous. Notable voices including U.S. Senator Chris Murphy warned that a military intervention in Gaza could lead to significant loss of American lives and prolonged conflict in the region. 6. Strategic implications. Analysts suggest that Trump's proposal could complicate ongoing ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas. The plan may harden positions on both sides, potentially undermining efforts for a peaceful resolution. Furthermore, it raises concerns about the U.S.'s role in the region and its relationships with Arab states. Legal and political ramifications. Experts have highlighted the potential legal ramifications of Trump's plan, which could violate international treaties and norms regarding sovereignty. The implications of forcibly transferring populations echo colonial practices that were largely condemned in the post-World War II era. The international community's response is likely to include diplomatic protests and calls for adherence to international law. International reactions. Israeli government, Netanyahu appeared to be cautiously supportive, viewing Trump's proposal as a potential means to reshape the geopolitical landscape in favor of Israel. Arab nations. There was a unified rejection from Arab leaders, with statements emphasizing the necessity of a two-state solution and the illegitimacy of forced population transfers. Global human rights organizations. Various groups condemned the proposal, framing it as a violation of human rights and international law. Timeline of key events. February 4, 2025, Trump announces the Gaza takeover proposal during a press conference with Netanyahu. February 5, 2025, immediate global backlash, with leaders and experts condemning the plan for its legality and implications for peace in the region. Conclusion. Trump's proposal for the U.S. to take over Gaza represents a stark departure from traditional U.S. foreign policy regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The plan has ignited intense criticism and debate, raising questions about legality, feasibility, and the broader implications for peace and stability in the Middle East. As the situation develops, the international community's response will be crucial in shaping the discourse around Gaza's future. In analyzing Donald Trump's proposal to take over Gaza, several counterintuitive elements emerge that challenge common perceptions about U.S. foreign policy and international relations, particularly in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Below are the key counterintuitive insights drawn from the content. 1. Economic redevelopment versus humanitarian concerns. Trump's vision for Gaza includes transforming it into an economic hub, which he describes as prime real estate. This perspective is counterintuitive because it prioritizes economic development over the humanitarian crisis faced by the nearly 2 million Palestinians residing there. Critics argue that a focus on economic potential ignores the immediate needs for humanitarian assistance and stability. The juxtaposition of economic aspirations against the backdrop of forced displacement raises questions about the feasibility and morality of such an approach, suggesting that economic benefits cannot be separated from human rights considerations. 2. Support from Israel but rejection from Arab nations. While Trump's proposal appears to align with certain Israeli political interests, particularly among far-right factions that advocate for the removal of Palestinians, it is met with significant backlash from Arab nations. This reaction is counterintuitive given the historical context where U.S. policies often aim to balance Israeli and Palestinian interests. The lack of Arab endorsement for Trump's plan indicates a shift in regional dynamics, where even proposals that appear to favor Israeli security are rejected by neighboring states that prioritize Palestinian rights and sovereignty. 3. International law and sovereignty issues. Trump's suggestion to forcibly relocate Palestinians and assume control over Gaza starkly contrasts with established international norms regarding territorial sovereignty and population transfers. The proposal reflects a colonial mindset reminiscent of past imperialist practices, which many analysts argue is incompatible with contemporary international law. This counterintuitive stance highlights a potential regression in U.S. foreign policy, challenging the notion that the U.S. typically upholds international legal standards in its diplomatic engagements. 4. Potential for increased violence and instability. The idea of deploying U.S. troops to enforce control over Gaza is presented as a means to ensure security and order. However, this notion is counterintuitive to the America First doctrine, which generally advocates for reduced military entanglement abroad. Experts warn that such military involvement could provoke violent resistance from local populations and exacerbate tensions. The expectation that military presence would stabilize the region contradicts historical precedents where foreign military interventions have often led to prolonged conflicts and instability. 5. Trump's distraction from real issues. Several political analysts suggest that Trump's proposal distracts from the urgent need to address the underlying issues in Gaza, such as law and order, infrastructure rebuilding, and establishing a sustainable peace. This diversion of focus is counterintuitive, as it suggests that a radical proposal could overshadow the complex realities of the situation, diverting international attention away from genuine diplomatic efforts needed for conflict resolution. 6. Visionary leadership versus practical realities. Trump's characterization of himself as a visionary leader who presents solutions to unsolvable problems contrasts sharply with the practical realities of the situation in Gaza. While this proposal may seem like an ambitious plan, it is criticized for lacking a viable implementation strategy and for being impractical in the face of well-established geopolitical challenges. This dissonance raises questions about the nature of leadership in foreign policy, suggesting that visionary ideas must be grounded in reality to be effective. 7. Political fallout in the U.S. The proposal has garnered mixed reactions within the U.S. political landscape. with Democrats condemning it outright while some Republicans remain silent or supportive. This division is counterintuitive given Trump's previous attempts to unify the party around more mainstream foreign policy approaches. The backlash indicates a potential rift within the GOP regarding foreign policy direction, suggesting that Trump's radical ideas may alienate traditional supporters who favor more conventional diplomatic solutions. 8. Implications for future U.S. foreign policy. Trump's extreme proposal could redefine U.S. engagement in the Middle East, moving away from long-standing diplomatic frameworks supporting a two-state solution. This shift is counterintuitive as it suggests that the U.S. could adopt a more unilateral and aggressive stance in a region where multilateral cooperation has been essential for peace efforts. The potential abandonment of established diplomatic norms could have lasting repercussions on U.S. credibility and relationships with both allies and adversaries. In summary, Trump's plan for Gaza presents a myriad of counterintuitive insights that challenge conventional wisdom about U.S. foreign policy, humanitarian priorities, and international law. The implications of such a radical proposal not only affect regional dynamics but also raise fundamental questions about the future trajectory of U.S. engagement in global issues. Donald Trump's proposal to take over the Gaza Strip, announced in February 2025, has ignited a firestorm of controversy and dissent across the globe. While mainstream media coverage has focused largely on the immediate reactions from political leaders, experts, and organizations, several significant implications and underlying themes merit deeper examination. 1. Colonial echoes in policy proposals. One of the most critical aspects of Trump's plan is its stark resemblance to colonial practices of forced displacement and territorial control. This is particularly significant given the historical context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where colonial legacies continue to influence current geopolitics. Trump's suggestion that nearly 2 million Palestinians be relocated to neighboring Arab states echoes past colonial endeavors that sought to erase indigenous populations in favor of new governance structures. Experts have noted that this proposal could violate international norms regarding sovereignty and human rights. Natasha Hall from the Center for Strategic and International Studies emphasized that the proposal harkens back to colonialism, suggesting that the international community must scrutinize such actions meticulously. The implications of a policy reflecting colonial attitudes are profound, as they could set a dangerous precedent for future interventions in other regions, signaling that such actions might be permissible under a guise of development or economic benefit. 2. Legal and diplomatic fallout. Trump's plan raises significant legal challenges, particularly concerning international law. The potential for a unilateral takeover of Gaza could be perceived as an act of aggression, undermining the existing frameworks that have sought to establish peace and security in the region. The backlash from global leaders, including condemnation from Palestinian authorities and neighboring Arab states, highlights the fragility of U.S. diplomatic relations in the Middle East. Countries like Jordan and Egypt, which have historically resisted forced relocations of Palestinians, find themselves in a precarious position. The potential strain on U.S. relations with these nations could destabilize existing alliances and hinder future diplomatic efforts in the region. Furthermore, the U.S. commitment to a two-state solution has been called into question, as Trump's rhetoric seems to pivot towards a more imperialistic approach to foreign policy. 3. Military engagement and security risks. Trump's openness to deploying U.S. troops to enforce control over Gaza adds another layer of complexity to his proposal. Such military engagement would not only risk American lives but could also lead to prolonged military entanglements reminiscent of the U.S. invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. The specter of American soldiers encountering hostile resistance raises fears of escalating violence and destabilization in an already volatile region. Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Wesley Clark articulated concerns about the implications of American military presence in Gaza, questioning the feasibility of maintaining security in a territory with deep-rooted tensions. The risk of violent backlash against U.S. troops could further entrench anti-American sentiments and fuel extremist ideologies, ultimately compromising U.S. national security. 4. Economic motivations and real estate rhetoric. Trump's framing of Gaza as prime real estate ready for redevelopment underscores a troubling trend where geopolitical issues are viewed through the lens of economic profitability. His vision of transforming Gaza into an economic hub while appealing from a business perspective neglects the humanitarian crises and complex socio-political dynamics that shape the region. Critics suggest that this perspective reduces the lives of Palestinians to mere economic variables, overlooking their historical grievances and aspirations for self-determination. The economic rhetoric surrounding Gaza can be seen as an attempt to distract from the pressing need for a genuine political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which has often been sidelined in favor of transactional approaches. 5. The role of regional players. The proposal also raises questions about the role of regional players in shaping the future of Gaza. Trump's comments may be an attempt to pressure Arab nations into taking a more active role in Palestinian affairs, particularly in terms of resettling displaced populations. However, the historical rejection of such proposals by Arab states indicates that Trump's approach may be fundamentally misaligned with the realities on the ground. The reaction from Arab leaders has been largely negative, with many reiterating their commitment to the two-state solution. This highlights the potential for Trump's proposal to alienate key regional allies, further complicating U.S. diplomatic efforts in the Middle East. The lack of support from Arab nations signals that the path forward will require more than just unilateral U.S. action. It necessitates collaboration and respect for the voices of those directly affected. 6. Impact on ongoing negotiations. Finally, Trump's proposal comes at a time when ceasefire negotiations between Hamas and Israel are already fragile. Analysts warn that such a provocative statement could harden positions on both sides, diminishing the incentives for parties to engage in constructive dialogue. The timing of Trump's announcement following a period of tentative progress in negotiations raises concerns about its disruptive potential. The implications of Trump's Gaza plan extend beyond immediate political ramifications. They touch upon deep-seated issues of identity, sovereignty, and international norms. The discourse surrounding this proposal reveals significant divides in perspectives on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the broader Middle East, underscoring the need for nuanced, respectful engagement with the complexities of the region. In conclusion, while Trump's announcement has received considerable media attention, the broader implications, including colonial echoes, legal challenges, military risks, economic motivations, regional dynamics, and impacts on negotiations, are crucial for understanding the potential consequences of this radical proposal. These dimensions warrant careful consideration as the international community grapples with the evolving landscape of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. 1. Radical proposal and its implications. Former President Donald Trump's proposal to take over Gaza and facilitate the resettlement of its Palestinian residents represents a significant deviation from traditional U.S. policy in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This plan, likened to a form of colonialism by critics, raises serious concerns about legality and morality. Experts highlight that forcibly relocating populations and claiming sovereignty over recognized territories could constitute violations of international law. The suggestion to turn Gaza into an economic hub while appealing from a real estate perspective fails to address the deep-rooted political and humanitarian issues that plague the region. 2. International backlash. The immediate global reaction to Trump's proposal has been overwhelmingly negative. Palestinian authorities, Arab states, and various international leaders have condemned the plan as impractical and dangerous. The proposal has reignited fears of ethnic cleansing and has strained U.S. relations with key Middle Eastern allies such as Jordan and Egypt, both of whom vehemently oppose the forced displacement of Palestinians. This backlash not only complicates local diplomatic relations but also raises questions about the U.S.'s credibility and influence in Middle Eastern geopolitics. 3. Potential for escalation. The suggestion of deploying U.S. troops to Gaza to enforce control adds a layer of complexity and risk to Trump's proposal. Military involvement could lead to violent resistance against U.S. forces, further entangling the U.S. in a protracted conflict. Historical precedents indicate that foreign military occupations can exacerbate tensions and lead to increased terrorism, which could pose a significant security threat to both American and regional interests. Furthermore, the ongoing negotiations for a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel could be jeopardized by the introduction of U.S. military presence, potentially hardening positions on both sides. 4. Strategic repercussions. Analysts suggest that Trump's approach may inadvertently pressure Arab nations to engage more actively in Palestinian affairs, though it could also be seen as a distraction from pressing humanitarian crises in Gaza. The proposal appears to shift the focus away from the long-advocated two-state solution, undermining decades of diplomatic efforts aimed at achieving peace in the region. Additionally, Trump's rhetoric may embolden far-right factions in Israel while alienating moderate voices advocating for a cooperative resolution to the conflict, thus complicating future peace negotiations. In summary, Trump's radical vision for Gaza not only poses significant legal and ethical dilemmas but also threatens to destabilize an already fragile region. The international backlash, potential for military escalation, and strategic repercussions underscore the plan's complexity and the myriad challenges it presents for U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. 1. The partition of India 1947. The partition of British India into two independent dominions, India and Pakistan, involved the mass relocation of populations based on religious identity. This led to significant violence, the deaths of hundreds of thousands, and the displacement of around 15 million people. The partition was framed as a solution to ethnic tensions but resulted in substantial humanitarian crises, echoing themes of forced relocation and the challenges of nation-building. 2. The Trail of Tears 1830s. This refers to the forced removal of Native American nations from their ancestral homelands in the southeastern United States to designated Indian Territory west of the Mississippi River. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 led to the relocation of thousands of Native Americans, resulting in thousands of deaths due to disease exposure and starvation. The Trail of Tears serves as a historical example of the consequences of governmental policies that disregard the rights and sovereignty of indigenous populations. 3. The Armenian Genocide 1915 to 1923. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire systematically exterminated 1.5 million Armenians through mass killings and forced deportations. The genocide involved the relocation of Armenian populations to the Syrian desert, where many died from starvation and harsh conditions. This tragic event highlights the severe outcomes of ethnic cleansing and the international community's failure to intervene effectively at the time. These historical cases illustrate the complex dynamics of population displacement and the dire consequences that can arise from state-led initiatives aimed at altering demographic realities. Future outlook: predictions for American influence in Gaza over the next decade. The recent proposal by former President Donald Trump to take over the Gaza Strip represents a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy concerning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This radical vision is not merely a fleeting idea, it signals potential long-term implications for American influence in the region. Here we provide predictions for the future, focusing on key areas including political dynamics, humanitarian consequences, and geopolitical ramifications over the next 10 years. 1. Political dynamics and U.S.-Israel relations. Trump's proposal aims to redefine U.S. engagement in the Middle East, emphasizing a more direct and interventionist role. Over the next decade, we can expect a period of increased U.S. involvement in the region, possibly leading to strengthened U.S.-Israel alliance. Trump's vision aligns with the far-right elements in Israeli politics. As a result, we might see a closer alignment between U.S. and Israeli policies, particularly regarding security and military cooperation. However, this may alienate moderate Arab states and hinder the prospects for a two-state solution. Polarization of U.S. politics. Domestically, Trump's approach will likely deepen divisions within the U.S. political landscape. Democrats and moderate Republicans may push back against the idea of forced population transfers and military interventions, framing them as violations of international law. This could result in heightened political tension and protests within the United States. 2. Humanitarian consequences for Palestinians. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is already dire, and Trump's plan could exacerbate existing crises. Key predictions include increased displacement. If implemented, Trump's proposal to relocate Palestinians could lead to mass displacement and exacerbate humanitarian crises in neighboring countries, particularly Jordan and Egypt. This displacement may ignite tensions within these countries as they grapple with economic and political challenges of accommodating large numbers of refugees. Prolonged conflict and instability. The potential for U.S. military presence in Gaza raises the specter of violent resistance from local factions such as Hamas. This could lead to prolonged military conflict, resulting in further loss of life and destabilization of the region. 3. Geopolitical ramifications. Trump's proposal has significant geopolitical implications that could reshape the landscape of Middle Eastern politics. Erosion of U.S. credibility. The unilateral nature of the takeover proposal could severely damage U.S. credibility in the region. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt may view the U.S. as a destabilizing force rather than a peace broker, potentially leading to a recalibration of alliances in the region. Rise of anti-American sentiment. Should the U.S. pursue a military intervention along the lines suggested by Trump, it could incite anti-American sentiment across the Arab world. This may lead to increased recruitment for extremist groups posing security risks both regionally and domestically. Realignment of Arab alliances. In response to perceived American overreach, Arab states may seek to strengthen ties with non-Western powers, such as China and Russia. This could lead to a shift in the balance of power in the region, with these countries stepping in as alternative partners for economic and military support. 4. Impact on future peace initiatives. Trump's actions may have a lasting impact on peace initiatives in the region. Diminished prospects for peace. The proposal undermines existing frameworks for peace, including the two-state solution that has been a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy for decades. Arab states and Palestinian leaders may become increasingly disillusioned with U.S. mediation efforts, leading to a stalemate in peace negotiations. Emergence of new diplomatic efforts. As a counterbalance to U.S. actions, there may be a resurgence of grassroots movements advocating for Palestinian rights, which could lead to new diplomatic efforts outside traditional frameworks. This could include increased support for international legal actions against perceived violations of Palestinian rights. 5. Long-term economic development prospects. While Trump envisions transforming Gaza into an economic hub, the feasibility of such a development remains questionable. Economic isolation. Continued conflict and instability will deter foreign investment and hinder reconstruction efforts. The international community may be reluctant to engage economically with a region under U.S. military control, fearing complicity in human rights violations. Potential for economic dependency. If the U.S. assumes control over Gaza, it could create an economic dependency on American aid and investment, which may not be sustainable. This could lead to long-term challenges in achieving genuine economic independence for the Palestinian population. Conclusion. In summary, Trump's proposal to take over Gaza sets the stage for a complex interplay of political, humanitarian, and geopolitical dynamics over the next decade. The potential for increased U.S. involvement may reshape American influence in the region, but it also risks exacerbating existing conflicts and undermining long-term peace efforts. As the political landscape evolves, regional stakeholders will need to navigate these challenges carefully to avoid further destabilization. The next 10 years will likely be marked by a struggle between competing visions for Gaza's future, each with profound implications for the broader Middle East.